Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about I should say an incident, but some mass layoffs that have now happened over at Warner Brothers and more specifically at DC Comics. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because it's been rumored for a while that Warner Brothers was looking to shut down DC Comics completely and simply use the rights and the characters in their films and television shows, and they would either outsource or just flat out cancel the comics. Um, Now, a lot of people kind of wrote it off. At the time, it's gained a lot more steam since, especially during the coronavirus stuff, because they've been losing a lot of money, and I know Warner Brothers and probably Disney are looking to downsize in some way from what they spend money on. But to be fair, also they don't put a whole lot of money into the comic book section compared to some of their other departments. Um, but this seems like a step forward today with possibly liquefying DC Comics because they laid off a third of the staff. A lot of them were very high profile people in higher places in the company. They lost a lot of senior people. Now they did not lose Jim Lee. He is still the acting executive, producer in chief. He's still the head of the company, or editor in chief, I should say. So he's still the highest part of that company. He's still there, but a lot of the people below him were axed, in addition to some other people that were part of the company. Like I said, about a third of it. Warner Media also got a cut back too, and that's the other thing that's kind of contributing to this is because of the coronavirus, because these companies are losing a lot of money. Because of the downsizing. They're going to unfortunately have to go and probably lay off people with fairly large salaries that have been there for a while, because even if they do promote more people, they're not going to be paying them the same wages that they would have these people that had been there for 25, 30 years. So it makes a bit more sense to get rid of them as opposed to maybe some of the more underlying people that are working there. But it's still kind of sad because you are getting rid of good leadership. Well, not good leadership, but leadership in these companies. People that, for the most part, probably had to work for that position, regardless of the quality of the work. Again, a lot of this stuff is up in the air depending on what these people have done in the past. Based on the quality of how the fans see their work as opposed to maybe how the company does. But with the case of DC, now you have kind of a weird situation where now you basically kind of gutted DC Comics to an extent. They've also stated that, well, not stated, but it's very highly insinuated that the DC streaming service will also get the axe in favor of HBO Max, which is what really WB is putting a majority of their time into. So you have really HBO Max, and then they don't want any competition. So some of the more popular shows and stuff off of the DC streaming service are probably going to make the jump. Stuff like Titans or Doom Patrol, things like that. Maybe Swamp Thing season 1 will make its way over there. But they're everything else on there that is not profitable to them, they will probably axe it. They will probably take it out. I don't see the comic subscription and stuff like that, all that, the one place for DC Comics, that's probably not going to be a thing anymore. I'm not sure what their actual subscription numbers are, but I can't imagine it's anything close to like a Netflix or even like a Disney Plus. It's a very niche type of service, kind of like Shudder. Even though I really do love Shudder, it's basically kind of a niche service for horror fans. So you have that situation, and it's been rumored that a similar situation is going to be taking place over at Marvel at some point in the near future as well, because the rumor has gone around that Disney is thinking of liquidating them. Now, here's where you run into the issues, because the thing is, the DC is also saying that they want to focus less on physical comics, again because of side effect of the corona stuff, and focus more on digital, which basically has a death sentence for any specific comic book shops that might still be in business. And again, I assume a lot of them went out of business, since a lot of them are small businesses with the whole shutdown and everything. So if they did that, then they would be killing whatever remaining shops are probably left, who don't also operate as like a game store, because most of them have adapted to the point now where they're more of a game store, where they have stuff like Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons or World of Darkness, or any kind of trading card game or collectibles, things like that. So they've adapted to diversify what they actually sell. So if they lost the comics, they're probably going to lose a good amount of money, but at the same time, they might still be able to survive with the other stuff. So that's really what I think you need to look at when you look at the companies that do go under as opposed to the ones that don't, at least in this type of a scenario. So now you have a situation where you have a large amount of comic book shops that are going out of business. They had a whole incident with Diamond, I think, maybe like a month ago, where they were refusing to deliver or something along those lines. So that also hurt too. Um, but now you have this situation where DC is thinking about pushing almost all digital comic books. And again, Marvel has been probably doing similar thoughts in regards to their comic book branch as well, of minimizing the amount of actual printing they have to do, and then just simply shipping the book out digitally. Now, I'm one of the people that I advocate for physical media. Because if you have something stored in a cloud or on a disk or something like that, it's not as safe as it is if you're holding the actual something in your hand. That's why I like to buy movies that I actually enjoy, buy a physical copy of them. So that I will always have that. And as long as I have some form of a DVD player or a Blu-ray player or something, then I'll always be able to watch that film, even when it's not on a streaming service or I don't have it on the cloud. Something like that. Because again, if all that stuff goes down, if something gets canceled, then guess what? Everything you just put money into all just escapes into the ether. Um, there's nothing left. You can still maybe enjoy the media to some extent, but you're never going to get any new media from that source. So you have that. You have the probability of the data just being deleted or their systems getting messed, or whoever you bought it from, their systems getting messed up. So now it's removed from your library. You don't get that with physical media. And the same thing with comic books. Comic books too. A physical copy of a comic book there is no substitute for it. There is no substitute to being able to open the book and turn the pages with your own hands and read at your own pace, and actually be able to hold and see this object that you're reading. Which it sounds very strange for me to be describing it that way, like it's something archaic. It's not. It really isn't. But what happens now is that you have this kind of digital takeover of physical media in a sense. Not necessarily with movies. Movies really haven't changed all that much, but comic books definitely have, especially in the last probably 15 to 20 years, with the introduction of the digital comic book. So by moving closer towards that, they're eliminating the need they have for physical media, which I'm assuming just, that cuts out the printing costs and all that stuff, which again, they wouldn't be thinking about if it wasn't, if they weren't losing money because of coronavirus. So if they're, if they're actually going to try and cut back, then yeah, it would kind of make sense if they're going to push more for a digital model, especially with the way, stores and stuff are still shut down in a lot of places. They're still going to be pushing for that digital model, and now they have a reasonable excuse to do so. So it's kind of it gave them an excuse to do something that they were probably planning on doing anyway. And again, I don't see Disney being far behind in this. I think that they're probably and maybe in the next few months they'll release a round of layoffs of high-ranking people at Marvel Comics. And then they'll say, "Oh, we're going to go more digital with it," and stuff like that. We're not going to do any more of any more shipping of physical copies of books or anything like that. Which again, I find very sad, but I understand it from a business perspective. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I understand it to a point because, again, like I said, they don't dump a lot of money into Marvel Comics anyway. Trimming the fat there is like saying, like, oh, you saved $5 at Walmart or something like that. It's not anything I would say to write home about. Now, if they could actually, save money and get revenue from their park service again, because that's really where the main part of, and I'm talking about Disney specifically. That's where a lot of the main part of their revenue comes from, and that's really the only part of their company in the last 2 to 3 years, even before this, that was doing really, really good numbers outside of Marvel Studios. Outside of the theatrics, because they're and then gradually that started to tick down because you had Galaxy's Edge, which was a major failure. You had a bunch of other stuff. So they were already kind of under a money crunch to begin with from certain parts of their company. So now you just have compounded that to the point of ridiculousness. But it's one of those things that I think it's almost an inevitability at this point. if the financial situations keep going on the way they are, that DC and Marvel will probably be liquidated. And I would assume that they would then, ship or outsource their services to other production studios, which would be cheaper. I mean, Disney's already done that with IDW and Marvel anyway. They've been outsourcing books, and I don't know if Warner Brothers has done that with DC at all, but I wouldn't surprise me if they started doing that with companies like IDW or Top Cow or uh, you know why am I drawing a blank on this? Dark Horse, all those kind of major third-party companies that have the facilities to actually make and create the books that they want. The only problem is that the other thing you're going to probably see is that the catalog of comic books is going to crash as well, because if they are doing any form of physical printing or if they're outsourcing the books, they're probably paying per book, so they're probably going to try and slim down the lineup. So if you're a fan of a very wide variety of comic books, then chances are your tastes are probably going to have to be very limited in the years to come, because they're probably going to slim down if they haven't already, they're probably going to wind up slimming down whatever series they happen to be releasing on a monthly basis. But that's just kind of my take on this sort of news. I want to know what your take is. Do you think that this is something permanent, that this is something they're looking to do, that DC and Marvel will eventually be liquidated? Do you think that that this is just kind of a temporary thing because of the coronavirus? This isn't this isn't anything that's going to stick. They'll hire more people back as soon as the revenue kicks back up again in another, 6 to 8 months or something like that. Put your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?